No worries. Yeah. So so I was waiting around, basically waiting for people to tell me that, I could work at their company, I could do certain things. I was qualified for XYZ. And I wasn't taking initiative. I wasn't really trying to make any of that happen for myself. Um and so this was sort of like, well, it's like the first entrepreneurial thing that I ever did was like saying, it wasn't even like start a business or anything. It was just saying like, I'm gonna take control of my life. I'm gonna start. Um, I don't care if I quote unquote can do this, or if I'm qualified, or if I've done the training even to do these. I want to find out what it takes, and then find out if my body can do these, instead of just saying that I'll never be able to do this, even if I spent the time trying to learn how. Um, and so it was just that initial kind of interest or spark that kind of started me on this. I remember the first race I ever did. I said I want to do a triathlon, but I was too scared. I was so scared of doing a real triathlon with like a lake and a bike and a 5K run, that I decided I was going to do an indoor triathlon, and it's literally the first race I have on my blog, because I figured it'd be like easier. If I was drowning in the water, I could just probably stand up because it's a pool rather than a lake. Like I figured, it was basically a 1 hour duration. And I figured I could like maybe last an hour. I'm pretty sure I could figure it out. So, um, it's really a series of Joel learning how to take baby steps of something that's slightly outside of his comfort zone. And over the last 4.5 years, it's sort of compounded into a website, a community, and then bigger adventures for myself. And it's funny because you're one of the first people like, I think in the first couple months or something like that, and ended up finding the site. And it's just funny to see how, once you decide you're gonna do what you want to do, um, life can sort of evolve really, really quickly, and your daily situation can change very, very rapidly, and it's kind of cool to see happen. Yeah. It sometimes is irrelevant. Like sometimes, like those, the way you figure things out doesn't like, it never actually clicks until you're like in the middle of it. Um, they always say like, I used to play basketball, and a lot of times in basketball, if you think about the game too much, you start to play worse because you're trying to analyze stuff or whatever. And the idea is you just get in the game, and you've done a lot of practice, but every time you just jump to the game, you're reacting rather than always thinking about it. And sometimes I think in life, people try to plan stuff out too much, and when you just make the decision that I am going to do XYZ by XYZ date, um, it's a lot more powerful, and you give yourself a lot more control to sort of like, well, I've decided I'm going to do that, so now that's a priority, and I'm going to figure it out. No, no. So I was in Punta Arenas, yeah, Patagonia, um, and I did a 40-mile marathon or ultra marathon down there. And I mean, this might be a good example. I jacked my ankle up pretty bad at mile 24. So um, that's just a little past halfway in this marathon. I rolled my ankle pretty bad, jacked at my peroneal tendon, and basically at mile 24 was like limping along at like 15, or like went from like a pretty steady pace to like 15 or 16-minute miles, which is not good, especially when I had like 15 miles left to go. And I limped along and kind of felt sorry for myself for a little bit. And I realized I was either gonna like give up right there, or I was gonna figure it out, bring myself home, like bring myself to. I got to get to the finish line one way or another, so I might as well, like have it count, especially when I came all the way. Patagonia is not an easy place to get to. I'm like, I got all the way down here. I did all this planning. I've done all this other stuff. I'm not finishing this thing, and it's funny. Every single race, every single like big thing I've done, um, has a point where you kind of want to give up because you think this is stupid or it's too hard or whatever. And it comes down to you either deciding, yeah, you're right, like this is really hard. I don't know why I'm doing this. Either that or I don't really care what's going to happen to me. Like I could break my other ankle. I get like attacked by what, like it doesn't matter. Like you get to like a ruthlessness in your head where you just say like it doesn't matter what's going to happen to me, I'm going to do this, unless like unless it kills me. So and and sometimes like just having that attitude is the one thing you need to start, like to get over whatever little bump in the road you have, and then just really just like impose your will on the race, on your goal, on whatever it is that you're trying to do. Never. Never. So I mean, at some points, like I've given, like this. I've almost reacted this in a poor way. Like I don't know if I'm necessarily the model citizen for planning stuff out, but I've run into. I'm like a recovering perfectionist, and I only do things in extremes, kind of. So moderation is not my strong point, but um, I used to be a perfectionist and wait all the time for stuff to be perfect. The problem with that was like when I was starting a business and like trying to do different things, nothing's ever perfect. And so I found myself that I was never getting anything done because I was always waiting and trying, and it paralyzed me. I couldn't do anything. And now I've had a sort of like an opposite reaction of like I'm pretty comfortable with not knowing how things are going to work out, and so sometimes I'll just jump into stuff. And like I did a race in South Africa, and I didn't really plan. I think I booked my ticket like 2 weeks before I left, and then I ended up having to buy like this is I make stupid errors all the time, and I will gladly admit it. But I like booked the wrong flight or something like that, and then I had to like rebook my flight like on the last minute, and it wasn't a big deal. I didn't flip out, but I've almost sort of decided that sometimes you don't even need a plan. You just jump in and you figure it out, and you make it happen one way or not enough. And if you have like a resolute attitude that's like tested enough, a lot of times, sometimes sheer will prevail over planning, over preparation, etc. I think I need to do a better job of mixing the two than I do sometimes, but it is one of those things that a lot of people spend a lot of time um mentally preparing themselves, and they never like push themselves out in the field and get the actual experience. And so I don't think my way is necessarily the perfect way, but it's definitely another angle that can help people, push outside their comfort zone, maybe get ready to do something that they're maybe a little scared to do, and not necessarily doing every single day. So, like plans, I like plans. They're useful. Um, there's a there was a spy show called Burn Notice, and he has a quote in there that uh, I liked. They're like, so Mike, what's the plan? And he's like, you do have a plan, right? Like you know what's going down. And he's like, I don't really have like a plan. No, I don't have a plan. I have some tactical objectives and some nice to haves, but I don't have a plan. I like, so he's like, he's got things he wants to get done, and he knows the situation, and he has his training, and he has, he knows how to do a good amount of the things he's setting out to do, but he knows and he's planning for a gap there. between what and life or whatever's going to happen because anytime if you're planning to do something sufficiently difficult, there's going to be a lot of things that come up that you have no clue about, and you have to be comfortable operating in that sort of gray area. So fear at the beginning was a real big issue, and I've sort of like desensitized myself to fear from in some perspective, just because uh, I'm I've created a habit of consistently doing things that are outside my. I'm getting a little bit used to being a little bit scared, I guess, is what I'm saying. Um, so when I first started, I really didn't think I could do anything. The site is called Impossible because it felt like everything was impossible. Like I really like it was just like everything was this looming challenge, and it was all out in front of me, and I might be able to do a triathlon, but I don't even want to start with that. So I'm going to just do an indoor triathlon. That was like my mindset when I started the entire site, which is crazy. Um, and so fear was this sort of thing that I had to like just beat down with a club over and over and over. And every race I did, it was like, okay, well, that's not impossible. What else can I do? And then just like continue pushing on limits and trying to find something that was challenging. And so every time like if I tend to think if you're not slightly scared of your goal, like it's either not that important to you or it's not big enough. Um, and so that fear is a pretty good indicator that you're on the right track to do something fun or exciting or adventurous or you know challenging with your life. Um, as far as dealing with it, I think it's kind of weird that people think like you have to like deal with fear. I think one of the things you can do is kind of coexist with fear and just be like okay, I'm scared of that, and like nothing tangible happens because you're scared. It all happens like when stuff actually goes down. And so one of the things like if you continually make a practice of pushing your limits and slowly doing stuff that's harder and harder and harder or different or challenging to you in one way or another, you so instead of being a lot of people I guess are scared of fear because they don't put themselves in situations where they experience it enough, and so it's sort of a foreign emotion, and they don't get used to it. I think one of the best things you can do is create a habit of like almost scaring yourself slightly, and then getting used to being around it and realizing, fear doesn't always like foreshadow terrible things to happen. It's sort of putting you in a place where you can make um, really cool things happen because you're challenging yourself enough. Yeah. So to give you, and I'm not trying to like um, beat this point home, but when I started out, like I want to do like all these things. I was like, I want to start a business. I want to travel the world. I can't even get a job. I'm living in my parents' basement, and like trying to maybe do a race, but I don't even know what three sports are in a triathlon. And so the idea of swimming in open water for me was like terrifying. Like I was like, I don't even want to do it. So that's why I did the indoor triathlon. It was so scary. Like that was I was like, I just need to figure that out. And so I did the indoor triathlon. I finished the water part. I was like, I can do that. What am I really scared of? And so deciding to push myself a little bit farther past that. Another example is um, when ran my first ultra marathon. Um, it was a 50K, which is 5 miles farther than a marathon or something like that. and I was so scared. I was like, I've done one marathon before. I finished my one marathon. I was like, that's enough. I'm good. Um, and so I decided I was going to do this ultra marathon, and I didn't know much about ultra marathoning at that point. I was just like, oh, I guess I'll figure it out. Um, and I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I could do it. Went out and actually did it. I wasn't super fast, but I got it done. And now, like, that was, I mean, that was so scary. But I went I just decided I the biggest thing about ultras, I know like from a running perspective, I'm not necessarily a runner. I'm like 6'2", 190 pounds. Like I'm kind of a big, awkward, bulky guy. I'm not one of these. I'm not one of these like 5'6", 120-pound guys that's just like zooming around. Like that's not me. And I wasn't necessarily born a runner, but what I like about ultras is it sort of teaches you it puts you in that spot every single time in a race and you say, hey, this is hard and my legs hurt and my feet hurt and my knees hurt, like everything kind of hurts. And everybody gets there, and it's really a choice of whether or not you decide, hey, I'm going to do this or not. And that like now I'm like, so I got a 50K, a 31 miler knocked out, and then I started looking at this Impossible or the 777 project, 7 ultramarathons, 7 continents, and there's like some crazy races on the itinerary. There's one in Antarctica, there's one on Mount Everest, and then there's a 100 miler one, and it's like, Joel, you remember when you were freaking about 31 miles? What do you think about running 3 of those? And at this point I've run up to like 56 miles. I think is the longest run I've done, which is basically a half day of running. Like that was enough. Um, the like you're staring at 100 miles, and right now like 100 miles seems ridiculous to me. Like I just jacked up my ankle. Like I've been hobbling around for a little bit, and the race is off for a bit, but it's still one of those things. You're like, am I? Is this a great idea, or am I a little crazy? And maybe the answer is both. But it's just one of those things. You if if I wasn't scared a little bit, I don't think, if you're not scared a little bit, then uh, you're either not pushing yourself enough, or like it's not sufficiently difficult. I think there's something cool about finding something that excites you so much and is so difficult that there's actually like a real chance of failure. But that's why it makes the interesting things interesting, because not everyone does it. They give up, and they settle for the things that are quote unquote guaranteed, or a lot more safe. Um, but if you start to realize, like you know, I mean, this is stuff I think we've talked about before. Like time's not guaranteed. Like nothing really is that safe, anyways. Like it's just all preconceived notions, and you start realizing that everything that everybody else has built, like they're just people too. Like, and all these other things that they've done they're done by people just like you. And so it comes back to that idea of just deciding you're going to do something, and then just deciding you're going to figure out how to do it. Whether or not there's a blueprint out there for you to follow or not. Mhm. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we can do a real tangible example, because I jacked my foot up first race, midway through the first race of 7, and basically I had to push 2 races. I had 2 races lined up in the coming months, and I had to push 2 races, and I had to back off training quite a bit because I jacked my foot up. Um, Now that could be a failure, and I can give up and go home. Like, man, Joel, 1 out of 7, you're already hurting. Um, I just did a podcast on this, but basically, I decided I sat down and looked at myself in the mirror, and I was like, you are going to do this unless like your legs fall off. Like this is like it might take you longer than you wanted to. You might have to refigure out how to, what your timelines look and what the races are going to be, and maybe make a few tweaks here and there, but you're going to do this. You're not going to do this. That's kind of what I decided. I was like, you're not going to do this. If you die tomorrow, then like, yeah, that's cool, like it didn't get finished, but like you're not going to do this. So um I've just kind of like decided, I it's a the thing about failure is it's only final when you decide it is, right? Like if you trip, like if you're trying to learn to walk and you trip and you never try to walk again, yeah, you failed at walking. But if you trip and you get back up and then you keep going, like you're learn like that's the difference between failure and learning. So I don't want to necessarily glorify failure, but I also don't want to like like you're not trying to fail. Like you don't want to go out and like, oh, I screwed up all these things. But you also don't want to just say like, oh well, there's a chance I could fail, and so if it's not guaranteed, then I really don't want to do it. And it's like nothing is guaranteed. Nothing. There's no like nothing's guaranteed. So why not at least take risks on the things that you want to do, rather than just saying, I'll just take one of the three prepackaged options of life, and I'm just gonna do that. Um, and once you start realizing, like it's scary and it's hard, and worst case scenario for me is like, like there like it takes me longer. It takes a little bit more money than I want to, and I have to take a couple shots to my ego. But it's one of those things. Like I've decided I'm going to do it, and it's going to get done. And every single time I've decided, I don't think it's anything special about me. I think it's more about coming to that decision point in your mind and flipping that switch and saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this." Every single time I've done that, I've figured out a way. Every single time I've said, "Oh, maybe I'll just hopefully figure it out," and maybe not. I haven't really made a commitment to it. I think my follow up actions and my priorities reflect the dedication of the commitment I made to whatever decision I'm making. Um, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, yeah. I that's kind of a lot of times people see my site and they think it's like um, think it's one guy kind of like talking about himself all the time. And what I'd really like, uh, it's fun to talk with you about this stuff because it's like you've been around since the beginning, and if you look at the whole story of the site, it's not really about like, oh, this is something cool I'm doing. It's like the story about this kid who didn't think he could do anything, and he's just slowly poking at the edges of his comfort zone and seeing like, oh, can I do that? Oh, maybe I can. Maybe let me work at that a little bit more. And slowly doing these things just because it's one of those things. I don't think always that the easy things are the things we should be doing. I think slowly, like over time, like it takes a little bit to get there, but once you start realizing that like all of my best experiences, all my best memories, all my biggest accomplishments have come when I've decided there's like some gray area over here that hasn't been defined by anyone, but it's curious to me, it's interesting to me, and I'm willing to put in a lot of work to achieve it or to try to find out more about it. And whether it's fitness stuff, whether it was running, whether it was business stuff, or even um, the site changed my entire way I approached my job, my business. I would never have thought started a business, uh, you know, 4.5 years ago, but I finally ended up getting a job, getting a couple promotions, and then ended up quitting to start my own thing because I'd kind of come around to that point for a long time. Even though I was doing these fitness challenges, business stuff was still really scary to me, and I hadn't really learned to apply um, those lessons I learned in fitness to other areas of my life. But what I found is that fitness is my favorite way to sort of train yourself to realize that you can teach your body to do almost anything if you can get your mind around it. And fitness is the most physical, tactile way I know how to do that. If you can learn to control your own body and learn that you can shape it how you want, you can look how you want, you can make it do the things that you want to do. Once you learn that you have like control over your own body, which a lot of people don't, you can start taking those lessons and start to apply it to other areas of your environment that are not 100% under your control, but your body is, pretty close to 100% under your control, except for genetics. But yep, yep. Yeah, but it's all learning and it's all stuff that's like already like out there. And if you're willing to step out and experiment a little bit on your own, you can find people like yourself and your awesome complex. They can help you do a lot of that stuff and take that right information and take it from just information implementation and and do it. And once you get that tactile feedback in your body and you realize you can like change the food you eat and change how you feel, how you look, etc. Um, that's that's like one of the coolest things. Like you have a real um, cause and effect situation, and you can start experimenting with how you can apply that in other areas of your life. Yep. 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 No. And it really is something that like they all snowball on each other. So maybe like for me, it started with fitness. Not everybody starts with fitness, but okay, I'm willing to try something new that's curious to me, and apply it, and then start chipping on these different things, whether it's fitness, life, whatever. Just being willing to kind of step outside your comfort zone because all of a sudden, then it makes everything else so much easier because you're like, this is a little new to me. This is a little scary, but it's not all unfamiliar to me because I felt like that. I say this all the time. Like I never thought I never thought I would run a marathon or whatever. And now I've run like I'll run them on a weekend just for fun. And it like I'm just a very different person than I was 4.5 years ago. And if you would have told me that when I first started, I would probably have laughed at you. Um, but it's one of those things that sort of changes it changes how what your body can do, but also your mindset and what you think of like upcoming challenges, and you have to find like bigger and tougher challenges to go after because you realize how adaptable you can be and how capable you can be. Yeah, yeah, Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's really maintaining like a learner attitude towards everything because when you start poking at stuff, you realize you're really bad at a lot of things that you didn't know existed. Like you're like, oh, I'm bad at that, and I'm bad at that, and I'm bad at that, and it's really getting used to being okay with not being amazing. We sort of settle into this thing where you learn through through high school, and then you go to college and you start getting more specific, and then you get in your job and you're doing like one thing, and you're kind of defined by like that one thing you do, and kind of recreating this like, okay, let's look at these different areas of my life, and I probably don't know everything in them, and find people around me who are smarter than me and know more things than me, and maybe I can learn, and not just learn from a book, but learn from life, and just kind of poke at these things, figure them out. And it doesn't even have to be like, even with running or whatever, like I've gone to like a couple different yoga classes, and every time I go to yoga classes, I'm like, I'm terrible at this. I'm not good. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I probably should be doing more of it, because it's one of those things that, like, I learn way more. In the last 4 years, I learned way more about nutrition than I could ever want to know. I've learned way more about running than I could ever want to know, and a bunch of different areas. But like the mobility area of my athletic career, especially after this injury, has been pretty well highlighted to me. And I'm like, all right, Joel, it's time to poke some new areas of your life, and get a lot better at the recovery and the rest area, and the self maintenance, especially when you're doing some of these big races. So. Um, and I'm terrible at it. Like it's tough because like once you get good at something, you kind of want to just only do the thing that you're good at. But was it like Heinlein said specializations for insects? And so like there's an aspect of becoming um, a healthy human where, yes, you want to have your areas of strength and expertise where you feel like you can operate in your zone, but you don't want your weaknesses to become tripping points. You don't want them to. You want to build up your weaknesses so you're not, maybe not completely well rounded. I think being well rounded is a little bit overrated, but I think you know, making sure that your weaknesses don't hurt you, and you're willing to try new things that are not necessarily, your best subject, is a real indicator that you can continue kind of poking at things throughout time. Yeah. And there's I think that is, I mean, that's just more of an exercise in your ego, than anything else. It's like, all right, ego, you're not gonna win today. Because if my ego, ran the day, it'd be like, okay, you're doing the three things that you're good at, and you're gonna avoid everything else. And that's where I find like, you know, procrastination. Okay. Um, let's see. We're popping up. Okay. Um, no, so procrastination has become. Let me wait till you pop up here. Can you see me? Or you're in the back of a car with sunglasses on and a tie. You look like a GQ model. And okay, is this good then? You want me to go? So procrastination sometimes is really more like ego protection in disguise. It's sort of like I, you're like, I know I'm not going to be that good at that, so instead of doing the thing that I really want to be doing or really need to be doing, I'm going to do, maybe the couple things I'm good at and kind of stay away from any weakness points or areas that I need to work on. And, what I found is it's just a continual battle to say, like, I'm not going to do, what makes me feel good or I'm not only going to do what makes me feel like good and like all important, but I'm also going to be able to, learn from other people and admit that I maybe don't know everything and there's a lot of other things out there that I have to try and screw up and fail and there takes a certain humility to be able to do that because when you sign up for that learner's attitude, that means you're going to be failing like a decent amount, and you're like, I I'd like to succeed just all the time forever and not have like any exceptions to that, but in order to really kind of promote that learner's mindset, you have to be willing to kind of take your ego down a notch and be a student. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people feel like that first step has to be perfect, and that's why they flip out, and they're like, that's so hard for everyone. But you realize, like, if it's just the start, and if you're willing to make the decision, like we talked about at first beforehand, to say, this is something I'm going to do, and then it makes everything easier because it makes the learning easier. It makes everything else just simpler because you're saying, okay, this is just a start, and every single step I'm going to take, I'm going to learn something from it. Mm. Thanks, man. Um, so I think the biggest thing you got to do in order to take that first step is you have to be comfortable with doing stuff that's uncomfortable. That's a little bit of what we talked about. I think for a lot of people who want to do these big challenges, I would tell them cold shower therapy is a great way to start because it's not necessarily fitness related, but it's physical related. Um, where if you quick rundown of cold shower therapy. It's a good way to train yourself to be uncomfortable for 5 minutes at a time in order to do other things in your life that are uncomfortable. Basically, the idea is for 30 days, take a cold shower instead of a warm shower because the moment you do decide to turn the knob to cold, your mind runs through all the same things that your mind runs through when you say, "Hey, I'm going to go to the gym today," or I'm gonna take on this challenge, or I'm gonna start a business or whatever. Every single time you step outside your comfort zone, and you're about to do something crazy. Um, or difficult, your mind starts acting up and tells you all these terrible things that are going to happen. That happens every single time you jump into a cold shower, and if you train yourself that, like we talked about, becoming comfortable with fear. If you train yourself to notice that, it's almost can be like a sort of form of meditation where you just become aware of that emotion and then you do it anyways. You realize that taking that cold shower doesn't really do anything to you besides make you cold for a few minutes, and just like if you step outside your comfort zone and commit to like a gym program for 8, 12, 16, however many weeks, and just say, hey, this is something I'm going to do and I'm going to prioritize. It's tough, maybe even a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not impossible and it's not as hard as you thought it was. And so for people who are looking to kind of just get started, I think the best tip I can give you is one, commit, two, write it down and tell someone. I don't know if you guys have a community aspect in the academy, but write it down and tell someone whatever it is you want, and don't hold back. And then if you need a little boost, do cold showers for 30 days and see if it doesn't change your attitude to doing uncomfortable stuff. Um, that's it's always fun to hear from people who think cold shower therapy is the stupidest thing in the world, and then they finally give it a chance, and 30 days later, they have a whole different mindset on how they approach challenges and goals. So, those are some of my best tips for getting started on this. And I think the first one is the most important, and it's what we started off with, and I think it's probably a good one to end on. But decide what it is you want to do and commit to it, and make a genuine commitment that you're going to do it, and then make it a priority in your life, and arrange your other priorities in life around it. Because if it is a commitment, if it is a big deal that you're going to do, it's going to take some sacrifices, and you're going to have to figure out some things that are going to change in order to get where you want to be. Yeah, it's a course. I tell people they don't even need the course because it's just 30 days of cold shower. But it's an accountability thing, and it's an email every day reminding you, hey, uh, do something uncomfortable today. And we have an app for it too. Actually, it sounds yeah it sounds like a lot of people who aren't familiar with it might think it sounds a little weird or like won't believe it works, but just give it a shot because it's one of those things that whether or not um, whether or not you think I'm crazy, like it's another. it's another way to practice having that beginner's mindset, saying, "Hey, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm willing to try it and experience it for myself." And having that mindset is key to being able to do anything else, whether it's cold showers, whether it's fitness, whether it's mindset and overall wellness related or whatever. Yeah, it's like 130, I think now. Awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, it's always fun to jump on the horn and chat with you. Yeah, cool, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.